Hey guys, what's up? Jimmy Smith. Back again. This time to talk about something I've been seeing a lot this week for some reason. Is Michael Chandler with his loss to Paddy Pimblett, 2-5 in the UFC, done at least at the elite level. Done probably. Period. There might be one or two more fights left for him because he has an exciting style, and the UFC might want to give his name value to somebody else who's coming up. Certainly a possibility, but his time at the elite level is done. Been through a bit too much. He's a bit too old. And his style is just comparatively limited. I've been saying that for years. So one of the things I've been noticing a lot is people talking about him, Michael Chandler, waiting around for Conor McGregor for 2 years was the worst decision. And his loss to Paddy Pimblett somehow validates that it was the worst decision ever. Should have kept fighting. 2 years off really hurt him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just want to give my opinion on that and kind of the whole fiasco that kind of was the Ultimate Fighter in 2023. Probably the most wasted Ultimate Fighter in Ultimate Fighter history. And I've never been a huge fan of the Ultimate Fighter since, I don't remember what season I kind of checked out. I think when Amir Sadallah won the Ultimate Fighter, having never fought in MMA before, I went, this is ridiculous. You're just not going to get the next champion. You're not going to get even a contender out of this series anymore, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there were guys like Kamaru Usman, who was the Black Zillions versus American Top Team winner. But the problem is the winners of the Ultimate Fighter have been less and less relevant over the last few years. It isn't even giving us guys that are okay, let alone contenders, let alone stars. So, but 2023 I think was exceptionally bad because the format ended up being, I don't think it was originally intended to be, kind of, newcomers versus veterans looking for another shot. And the veterans looking for another shot, which was Team Chandler, just wiped the floor with the new guys, which was Team Conor. They only had one win in the opening round. And it was the first time ever where they were worried about a wipeout, where one team wins every single fight. And so there's just nothing for the other team to do. The other coach for whatever round it is when they start taking each other on. I think it's the semis. So anyway, and the winners, Brad Katona, Kurt Holloway, since coming back to UFC, are 1-2, both of them. They're a non-factor in their divisions. These guys didn't make it the first time around, and I called the Ultimate Fighter finale where Brad Katona won his first Ultimate Fighter. I called that one in 2018 and didn't do anything his first one. What are they going to do second time out? You're just older. Just have more miles on you. And so it was a really wasted Ultimate Fighter. But going back to that coaching idea of, obviously it was finished August 2023. They were supposed to fight originally that fall. I think it was November was the first date kicked around. And Conor kept delaying, and there was constantly a problem. And then, he hasn't fought since. And Mike continued to wait around for that big payday. What you call it in boxing, and a bit in MMA, but really in boxing, cashing somebody out. Meaning you can take little fights, 3 or 4 of them, and not make the money you make on one big fight, whether you win or lose. Meaning it's worth it a lot of times for a fighter to kind of cash out. Meaning I'm taking on somebody I can't beat, but it's a big, huge name in a big, huge fight that will make me a lot of money. I'll take on Canelo Alvarez, and I'm going to lose, but I'm going to make millions of dollars when I can fight these other guys that I may or may not win. I might win, but all put together, I'm not making a fraction of what I'd make fighting Canelo Alvarez one time. So in boxing, call it cashing a guy out. When you know he's going above what he could normally do, but you're cashing out, you're taking the big money first. The weird thing about the Chandler-Conor fight is that I don't think Chandler was cashing out against Conor. And that I don't think it's like, he automatically loses, but hey, it's a big payday. I think there's a good chance Mike would have won that fight simply because I have no faith in Conor McGregor's ability to go through a camp and train and win. And I don't believe that the discipline is there at all. It's over for Conor McGregor. I said from the beginning, before the Ultimate Fighter started, I was like, we're never going to see Conor fight again, ever. And a lot of people thought I was crazy. And I said, I just don't think he's going to do it. He doesn't have the discipline to get through an actual camp. And so, and obviously all these excuses about, he's coming off an injury and this and that and this. And I said, hey, It only takes so long to heal from an injury, or you're never going to heal and it's over for you. After a certain amount of time, you have to acknowledge, I'm just never going to heal from this thing and it's over. And Conor kept dragging it on and on and on. So the decision of Michael Chandler to not take a fight in between. Now, a lot of people saying that we've kind of seen it in hindsight. He's 2-5, that, man, he lost those 2 years. Mike is Mike. I really believe that. Mike is Mike. The guy I called in Bellator a decade ago is pretty much the same guy that I saw fight Paddy Pimblett. The Paddy Pimblett fight, he had degraded substantially. But style-wise, the guy who lost to Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira twice and Dustin Poirier, to me, that's the same guy I saw in Bellator a decade ago. He blasts you with everything he's got in the first round, super explosive, super athletic, and that's it, right? Big for the weight class, really strong. That's it. That's who he was in Bellator. That's who he is in the UFC. So the decision-making here about losing 2 years, which he wasn't losing a prime 2 years. He was losing 2 years in his mid-30s, where, once again, he is what he is stylistically. It's not like he lost 27 to 29, where you're really doing great things. He lost his mid-30s, where he took a delay in order to fight Conor McGregor, but the other fights that he would have possibly taken those 2 years are the level in which he didn't have success before or after. So if he doesn't fight Conor McGregor, they put him against another, elite level guy, right? And I've never had faith in Michael Chandler beating those guys, ever. Tony Ferguson, I thought he'd beat Tony Ferguson. Other than that, every time he stepped in the octagon, I thought he was going to lose. Only time he ever proved me wrong was Dan Hooker. And when you look at, for example, the Dustin Poirier fight, that was November 2022. He films The Ultimate Fighter. I think it's probably filmed in the spring, airs in the summer of 2023. Doesn't fight again until November 2024. So 2 years off from fighting, 1 year off from The Ultimate Fighter. He comes back and he fights Charles Oliveira. He looked the same against Charles Oliveira as he did against Dustin Poirier in the previous fight. I didn't see oh man, that 2 years off really hurt him. Looked basically the same. Same skill set, same everything. Obviously Charles Oliveira winning at least 4 out of 5 rounds. A lot of people gave Mike round 5, which I think was fair, but it wasn't tactically competitive. Charles Oliveira was clearly the better fighter, more well-rounded, more relaxed. I've broken down that fight since, so you can look at that if you want to see it. It's Oliveira is tight yet relaxed. He's aggressive on the ground. He's snapping his punches, and Mike is throwing these haymakers that he always does, which Charles can see and is able to avoid and get around with basic footwork. So when I look at that 2 year gap where he could have fought, I didn't see a real degradation in Michael Chandler's skills between those 2 years, Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira, right? I didn't see a different Michael Chandler fight Charles Oliveira. I saw the same Michael Chandler fight everybody. The Paddy Pimblett fight, we did see that he's declined significantly, wasn't aggressive, wasn't explosive, wasn't athletic. The problem with Mike's style is it goes off a cliff. Now, Mike's cliff, I think, is lower than other fighters' cliffs. He's not Roy Jones Jr., who was destroying people when he was fast and athletic and quick. And then as he went along, he suddenly went off a cliff. Mike was good athletic and explosive, right? He wasn't great athletic and explosive. He's good athletic and explosive. Now that explosiveness has left him a little bit, as it does generally in your mid to late 30s, depending on your style and how many fights you've been through, he's got nothing to fall back on. Oh, well, I think I'll be technical. That ship has sailed. You didn't put the time in to be technical before. It's not going to work out for you now that you're in your late 30s. And that's one of the issues with a fighter who has a limited game. And I remember, and I've said on this channel before, when it came to Ben Askren, saying, and he told me in fighter interviews when he was in Bellator, I'm just going to keep wrestling until somebody can stop me. And my first thought was, yeah, but when someone stops you, you can't go back and then acquire all the other skills that you never worked on or didn't improve because you were such a great wrestler, right? The moment somebody does stop your takedown, and it was Jay Haran, was the first guy to actually, stop his takedown and make him kickbox. He looked awful. And I was like, well, you can't go back and then get another 5 years of kickboxing. You didn't sharpen those skills when you had the chance. And, you always had that crutch of being the better wrestler. And then, obviously, in the UFC, it didn't work out for him at all. But the idea that Mike's 2 years, and it was 2 years of fights, really 1 year, because that Ultimate Fighter was in mid-2023, to, obviously the next fight he had against Charles Oliveira, which was a year afterward in 2024. I don't see that. Mike cashed out, or tried to cash out, in a sense, against Conor McGregor. If he had fought in between, he loses just like he did against Charles Oliveira, because it's the same guy fighting the same way. And as long as UFC kept him at that elite level, he was never going to be great. He was never going to he'd have exciting fights, and Dana White has praised his exciting style. But if he had fought in those 2 years, he loses again. And then it's, okay, well, it just kind of shortens the timeline. You get what I mean? If he fights within those 2 years, he loses to Charles Oliveira. He loses to probably Paddy Pimblett. Although, maybe the degradation doesn't happen, if he doesn't take those 2 years and he has a better fight against Paddy Pimblett. I don't know. I don't have a time machine. But the idea that as long as Mike fought elite guys, he was going to look like Mike, meaning powerful, exciting, but limited, not enough to get over a 105-pound division that is really good at the elite level. Mike was never going to be competitive against those guys, right? He's a team that has a decent record, but they're out of the first round of the playoffs. That's Mike every time. Where once he fights elite guys, you see the difference in caliber, where he's there physically, he isn't there tactically. And folks, tactics is what separates elite fighters from champions and contenders. So had he fought within those 2 years, I disagree with a lot of people online that, oh my God, it's the worst decision he ever made. It just makes those losses in 2023 and early 2024 rather than late 2024, right? It just changes the timeline. It doesn't change the result. What you see is what you get with Michael Chandler, which is exciting, explosive, really fun to watch, but not having those next level things that would make someone great at 155 pounds. So a lot of people are saying that the layoff had something to do with it. If he had looked terrible against Charles Oliveira, I would go, God, man, those 2 years, maybe he would get another win in there, or like, man, he wouldn't look this bad. He had an exciting fight against Charles Oliveira in a losing effort, and Dana White said, as long as he's fighting, he can fight here in the UFC. Folks, that happens at any time with Mike. It makes no difference, those 2 years. So he's made some mistakes, but I think they are tactical mistakes and things that he didn't work on in the gym when he could have, where Mike had enough success in his professional career in Bellator and UFC that he never went to the gym and went, God, I got to fix things. He would win in Bellator, and then he'd take a step back. And then he'd win, and then he'd take a step back. And Bellator really got behind him promotionally. So there was no real incentive for a coach to go, hey, this isn't working. Like, it was working enough that he had multiple championship runs in Bellator. Now, he never had those string of title defenses that made him a great one in the way I think Patricio Pitbull was at 45. But it's this idea that he never had that come to Jesus moment because he was winning enough. And if you look at his UFC career, same thing. He beats Dan Hooker. He has some losses, beats Tony Ferguson, and then he starts losing. But Dana White's praising him because he's so exciting. He's still getting top billing. He's still doing, stuff where he's speaking in front of people all the time. And boy, he got so much attention that 2-5 really wasn't the career killer that it would be for a lot of people. It took really the Paddy fight for a lot of people to write him off, but he got so much attention and so much push from the UFC, really not looking elite, that there was no reason to go back to the gym and go, hey, I need to work on some things. And now I think that ship has sailed. I think what you see is what you get. But wanted to give my opinion about Michael Chandler kind of cashing out, right? The idea that, man, if he hadn't waited, he could have done better things. I think we see the same result just a little bit earlier. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Talk to you soon.